he just wasn't concerned about what people thought of him. And I think it's rebellious to, follow God and, not give your attention to what other people think about you. I think that's really rebellious, and I think that's really cool as well. I think that's really cool. So, I just love that so much. So Wild, would be that, just kind of like pushing the norm back and bringing in a new culture, kingdom culture.
You want answers? I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth! You can't handle the truth!
Let's be frank. We can handle the truth if we choose to open our hearts to it and push past the uncomfortable. To be frank means to be free, without hindrance, sincere, genuine, open, gracious, noble, and having nothing hidden. Listen into a frank conversation, raw thoughts, feelings, and real-life experiences served to you to challenge, inspire, and encourage you.
Welcome. We've started, by the way.
Hello. Amazing.
Yeah.
Hello.
I'm so glad we finally got to this point of actually chatting, because it's been back and forth for many months, but the time is right now.
Totally. We got there in the end. Yes. It's an honor to be here.
Yes. Ray, I want to know all about you, and I want to know about your walk with the Lord and kind of what is fundamental to you and what you've learned and where you've come from and where you are now. And I think in you sharing your story, others will be encouraged. So first, tell me who you are and what are you up to in life? What do you do?
What do? I do lots of things. So my name is Ray. I live in Nottingham with my husband and my cat Moses, and at the moment we actually moved to Nottingham in the pandemic, so we're in a very new season at the moment. So I'm actually doing a lot of writing at the moment. I'm taking advantage of just creating more because I've got more space at the moment because I'm looking for jobs. And that's been really fun, and just totally embracing that because there's just more time to do that, and it's great. So, that's a little bit about me, I guess.
Tell me about Wiildhearts.
Yeah, so Wiildhearts has been going for the last 4 years now, which is crazy. But Wiildhearts is basically a blog and an online magazine that I run, and it's a lot of fun. And we have an Instagram account as well, and we talk about life, we talk about faith, we talk about, I don't know, real things, taboo things, relationship with God. We share testimonies, stories. At the moment, we're doing a series called The 7 Deadly Sins versus the 7 Heavenly Virtues. So it's basically just a platform for creativity and glorifying Jesus.
Okay, so you started it 4 years ago. What brought you to the point in your journey where you wanted to start that? And tell us a bit about the heart behind it.
Yeah, so, oh my gosh. So, do you know, I wanted to start a blog for ages, but every time I tried to make one, it just didn't work. Like, for some reason, I either forgot about it, or it just didn't feel right, or it wasn't flowing. And you know what those times are like because creativity is just so different from season to season, and blogging just wasn't going, and but I really wanted to start a blog for a long time, and then I went away and I went to ministry school in California for 2 years, and that was the time that really sort of birthed Wiildhearts, really. And there's 2 elements to the heart behind Wiildhearts. So one of them was to kind of create a space for people to ask the taboo questions, within Christianity that you feel like you can't really talk about in church sometimes. So it feels a bit awkward, or you don't know what people think or whatever. it's kind of a space, take off appearances, let's just have a real conversation. And, you know, we don't have to worry about being messy emotionally. We don't have to worry about that stuff, you know, like, yeah, keeping up appearances. And that came from a place of discovering in my own walk with God how he creates space for us to be messy, and it doesn't faze him at all. And that was a huge like breakthrough for me in my walk with God, because I always thought God.
Yeah, I was actually going to say, it sounds like you're going into it anyway. I was going to say, did you feel like you couldn't be messy with God? Like,
You know what? I didn't know how to do the Christian thing. Like when I had an encounter with God, and I could not deny that he wasn't real. And I went into church, and I just didn't know how to do it. I felt like a round peg in a square hole, as they say. Like going into church, I felt too much. I felt too quirky. I felt too like wild. I just felt those things. But that was just me and my ignorance in a way. I just had no idea, like, that I really was made in God's image, and, you know, he loves humanity. Like, we're messy, we're beautiful, we're complex, and he loves being with us. He's our pastor, our shepherd, and I think it was a big thing learning that God was a kind, good dad. And, you know, and if you just spoke to the nature of a good dad, you know, a dad wants to scoop their kids up, you know, a good father does. So, like, yeah, I think just learning who he really was gave me space. Oh, I can just be myself. This is great. Like, you meet me where I'm at. You don't mind my mess. If I mess up, like, you're not surprised by that, you know? So that was a lot of stuff, but like it was a big journey.
Yeah.
So I'm like putting it.
When you say a big journey,
you know,
do you mean like a long journey of, like, what do you mean by that big journey? Is it over time and over various experiences with God, or?
Yeah. For me, it was definitely like over a period of years of just like unraveling and drifting away from God, coming back to God, working out like my feelings about like the church. And I love the church, but I had to work through that. And, you know, yeah, I had encounters with God and just reading his word. And it was just over a period of years where I got to know him. Do you know what I mean? It just, the relationship was built. So that was one part of Wiildhearts. And then there's like another part of Wiildhearts as well, where there was one time where in the middle of this kind of messy season, working stuff out, feeling like I actually can ask God questions and, you know, work my faith out, I felt him say to me one morning, and it was like an interrupted sort of moment, and I felt him say, "Ray, I made you wild. I made you in my image." And for me, that brought so much freedom into my life. And that was another thing with Wiildhearts as well. You know when you watch movies and there's the stereotypical Christian, and they you know, they have the kind of the socks and sandals and the like the gels like hair or the centre part, like trousers up to like over their belly and a belt, and that, you know, the kind of the goody two shoes type. And God just smashed that stereotype, I guess, in that moment, because that is a stereotype that's just false.
And is that what you had?
Like if you
is that what you had? Did you have this stereotype in your mind of, okay, now I'm a Christian, now I need to become this certain character persona?
I think so. I think so. Yeah, I think it was more a thing of like, okay, do I have to keep to rules now I'm a Christian? How does it work? That was the thing. I was like, do I need to keep to some like rules? That was the thing, and I think the goody two shoes stereotype thing, is so famous in the world. But actually, like, you can be a goth, you can be a punk, you can be a hippie. Like, no matter what you look like, you've got tattoos, piercings, crazy hair. Like, if you're a bit edgy, whatever. Like, whatever you look like, I feel like if people like that feel pushed out of church, that's an injustice. That is an injustice. And so I think Wiildhearts, the heart is to bring in those people. Like, guys, you the church needs you too. You bring a huge part of God's nature into the church. So so anyone that just feels pushed out because of what they look like or whatever, or what they've done in the past, the theology of like, if I walk into church, I'll burst into flames. That's bad theology. And I think, it's usually those people that I really want to reach, I think, and just be like, no, guys, like, you are so needed in the church.
Did you feel like your experience of church, that type of personality or character or cultural type was pushed out of the church or wasn't accepted in some way?
I think so. I mean, I must have done. And do you know what? There's not even like a memory that I have where, that was kind of given to me as like as a truth. But I just had that like perception of church. I just thought, it's for the goody two shoes. And maybe that's because of the narrative in culture and movies and songs and whatever else, that Christians look like that. They're goody two shoes. They're really sort of, whatever, that kind of thing.
Yeah. What does wild mean to you then?
Oh my gosh, what does wild mean to me? I think you can be a rebel for good. And I think there are certain people who do like to push the boundaries, and that can be used for bad and that can be used for good as well. I think Jesus was a rebel. He challenged. Oh my gosh, I love who Jesus was and how he challenged the Pharisees and how he loved people and he healed people, and he just wasn't concerned about what people thought of him. And I think it's rebellious to, follow God and, not give your attention to what other people think about you. I think that's really rebellious, and I think that's really cool as well. I think that's really cool. So, I just love that so much. So wild, would be that, just kind of like pushing the norm back and bringing in a new culture, kingdom culture, in my opinion.
And what do you mean by
which is risky and fun?
Yeah, what do you mean about the norm? So pushing the norm back, what does that look like?
Well, I think the kingdom is just countercultural, and so. And I think it's I think for humanity, it's so easy for us to just follow the crowd. And I guess is what I'm saying is going against the crowd is pushing the norm, and following God. And for example, like being radically generous, even that is not normal, like in a culture like especially now at the moment where it's kind of like, and I there's an element of this I love, like, of just success, being a boss woman, making your own money, and it's your money, do you, boo boo? Like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know, this, yeah, I don't know. Do you know what I mean?
So I want to kind of go a little bit deeper and see how your story can encourage a listener. So in church, we'll be really frank. In church, what have you found, or in your walk, that's been a challenge for you as a Christian with the church culture? And what I'm trying to get to is like trying to unpack it a little bit deeper, where you know, Wiildhearts came from wanting to allow people to have space to be their wild selves. Now, I know you're not saying like, hey,
Yeah,
go be wild, do whatever you want, yeah, like just indulge
totally.
yourself, because that's not the wild you're talking about. Um,
Yeah,
so,
totally. Yeah,
in your church experience, has there been an element of like wanting to push back against like religious mindsets, or like feeling, you mentioned when you became a
yeah,
Christian, you thought, okay, what are all these rules I need to follow? Um, in
yeah,
church, do you feel like that as Christians we are made to like have all these rules that we've got to follow? And is Wild Hearts a bit of a kind of push against that it's not about the rules? Or I don't even know if I'm making sense.
yeah. I think I used to feel like that in church, and as I got to know Jesus for myself, a holiness started to develop from within, and that was very organic and authentic in my relationship with God. And I think the thing that does upset me is that yeah, people would think that no, you have to behave and you have to do this, and that before you go before God. Like, sort yourself out, and then you can go to God. Like that. That for me, I'm like, we need to get rid of that theology, like now, because that is not true. Like, there's nothing we can do to earn the love of God. And as we get to know Jesus, holiness starts to, that's like,
Wow,
it's fruit of your
love
relationship with
that.
Jesus, holiness, you know. And yeah, and I think that is really sort of misunderstood sometimes in church, and that does upset me, because some people, they need the space to push back, to ask questions, to just be themselves, and not, just allow them to be themselves and develop their relationship with Jesus. I think it's easy for, the more wild ones, for people to kind of tell them what to do, and tell them, you're doing this wrong, you need to do it that way. But actually, sometimes people need to go through the process of failure and making mistakes, in order to grow in their relationship with Jesus, and they need the freedom to do that, because they're the kind of people, they've got to learn for themselves. They can't be told. And I'm not saying like there's not accountability, and things like
And
that
being
within
challenged by each other,
relationship
yeah.
and stuff. Obviously, yeah, absolutely. But I think at first, a lot of the time, they just need that space to work things out, and just be where they're at. Like, sometimes, like, even for me in my own story, the first encounter I had with God was with just a revelation of the cross, what the gospel meant, and it meant so much to me that God revealed that revelation, and that he thought I was worth that. Like, that was a huge thing. And then overnight, I couldn't swear anymore. The next day, I couldn't swear. I used to like drop the F-bomb literally in every sentence. And after that encounter, I just couldn't swear anymore. It was the craziest thing. But there were other things in my life. For one that comes to mind, binge drinking. That took a couple of years for God to work through with me. And God knew that. Like, he knows us so well, and he knows what to deal with, and when to deal with it. Like, and he knows how to speak to us. it's his kindness that leads us to repentance. And I just think sometimes, even with well-meaning people, there's kind of just been a bit of a clumsy way of handling that, sort of confronting or rebuking or whatever. I think there's sometimes going to be a bit of a clumsy way that's dealt with, and that is a bit more harsh than kind. Like Jesus was always kind when he led people to repentance. In fact, it was his love and kindness that led people to repentance, because he's just so good. And when you sort of encounter God's goodness, you're like, oh my gosh, you're so good, and it brings up the stuff where you're kind of not doing so well in, and it makes you want to be better. Like when you hang out with someone and they bring the best out of you, and you just want to improve in yourself because you're inspired by who they are, and they call you higher, like good friends and good people, leaders in your life that can have that effect. And Jesus is the ultimate person who can do that perfectly within how your personality will receive that, which I just think is so beautiful. So yeah, and I think another sort of edge of your question as well, I think something that in church that can upset me sometimes is the kind of people feeling like God's love is like this a cheesy message, or just because we talk about God's love, we're not talking about his holiness and his justice and his righteousness. And I'm passionate about those things, but sometimes I think when you are really preaching the message of God's love, you can be labeled liberal, or you're not talking about other things, and you should talk about those other things too. And I just think, yeah, but it all starts with God's love. That's where we find our righteousness, our holiness, our identity. I'm like, it's not a fluffy message, it's really profound and really powerful and life-changing. And so I don't like it when the message of God's love is misunderstood in that way. That feels like an injustice. So yeah, that was a very rounded answer. Hopefully,
I like it.
I answered your question.
Yeah, there's so much in there. Yeah, well, the one thing that pops to mind is the thing of if there's a new Christian, and putting heavy burdens on them to be instantly bearing all the fruit of the Holy Spirit, but that is a process that needs to be worked out in that person's life between them and the Lord. And yes, in the context of being surrounded by other believers who are walking with the Lord, and I think my own, being South African, I can be very straightforward, and sometimes I have been known and been told that I have been a bit harsh, and it's like you say, it can be well-meaning, but something I've had to really learn, and it's a process for me, is learning gentleness in how I speak to people, I guess, and not allowing my cultural South Africans, we've been known to be blunt, but not using that as an excuse, like, oh, I'm just blunt. But no, actually, yeah, you know what I mean? Actually, for me to speak to this person or address the certain issue, I can be frank and truthful, but there can also be a gentleness to it, and which maybe makes it easier for the other person to receive it,
Totally, yeah. But also, I might contradict myself here a bit, but you being South African and your bluntness, is also a beautiful thing. That's how God made you. And I think the biggie is having relationship with people. And if you sort of confronted a friend in your beautiful bluntness in the context of loving relationship, and them knowing
Yes.
you. I think, do you know what I mean? I think that actually that
Yeah.
they know you, so that's like, yeah, no, thank you, because that's important, and that's you too, and like, and obviously, yeah, gentleness and stuff, yeah. But I think it's tricky when it's the relationship
You've
isn't
hit
there,
the nail on the head.
and there's not
Yes.
that
It
kind
all
of
comes down to, is there a relationship
yeah,
of love here as a foundation? And do I have the right to say
yeah,
something in love to this person? And
totally.
yeah, I love that. It really does come back down to relationship. And I think as well, my experience with church,
Yeah,
in the kind of the westernized version of it, is that um I'm going to be really frank. Um, I've felt it's more of like, and I've had great experiences with God, and I've enjoyed worship, and I've received good messages and encouragement through the teaching, but I don't know, there's just feels like, and I don't know, it's because I am very much a kindred spirit. I'm a wild heart, and I am so tired of the structure and the business of it all, like, and just, yeah. And like, when I think about Jesus, and I've been watching The Chosen. Have you seen The Chosen? Yeah, of course you have. Great.
oh
Yeah,
yeah, it makes me cry
I've been
every
watching it like that. I watched last week, and my heart was longing to be amongst them, just walking and talking and eating around campfires, like, that
yeah,
true fellowship. And I literally felt like a longing in my body for it. I was like, I
yeah,
just so want to be around brothers and sisters,
yeah,
in relationship where you're known and them. And I feel like church for
yeah,
me
totally.
has not been that. It's been more about, okay, we arrive at this time, we sing these songs,
Yeah,
we sit down, we stand up again, they do these notices, then they give this sermon, and everything is just like very structured and the same. And I I literally I'm tired of it. But it's true, we're made for that relationship. So, and
yeah,
it's been so hard, and it's been hard to form. I
yeah,
have got, a few close friends which I have met through church, which have been a blessing, but the context of family and feeling family in church has not been there. Which I think, having spoken to some other people, they
yes,
feel
yeah,
exactly the same, and I think that's a real shame. And I've had experiences where I'm
yeah,
called by leadership in the church, and it's not calling to get to know me; it's calling to ask me as a videographer and someone who knows like the digital world to kind of offer my services. And yeah, and I just kind of felt
oh
that was
man,
like, hey, that's just
yeah,
missing the point. I'm like a human that just, let's start with love and getting to know each other and
totally.
having relationship, rather than, hey, fulfill a function in the church and then maybe you can find relationship here. So
Yeah, I think I completely agree. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it can feel like that, and I guess it's like, I mean, yeah, it's bringing the culture as well, isn't it? That you want to see, and I mean, at the moment we
yes, I
can't have
know. That's
people
why I'm
over for
longing probably
dinner
even
and
more.
stuff. I mean, we can go outside
Yeah.
and have coffee. but but yeah, do you know what, this is what I mean, obviously it's only once a year, this is why I love festivals as well. I always go to the Christian festivals because it's so free, and you can be barefoot, you can dance, you can go get coffee, have a chat, like, and then you can go back, worship, and all those things, like, but obviously there's not a festival all throughout the year, but
Yeah.
sadly. But yeah, I totally get what you're saying.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but going back to, I think, the main point of what you said, and was just about, and why I shared all of that, is because the relationship is the most important thing. And when the relationship is there, that trusting, safe relationship of
Yeah.
love, then you are able to, I guess, give people challenges and direction, in their walk. But it's important for for
Absolutely.
us to remember that if someone's like a new Christian and stuff, they're not to be expected to live up to all these different standards and rules. And even as more mature
No.
Christians who've walked with the Lord for a long time, it's not about the rules and regulations and, ticking off the boxes. It literally is
No.
about that process of relationship with him. And I like what you said earlier about, you drifted away from the Lord and then you came back and, you were in a bit of that, push and pull. But the point is you kept coming back to that relationship. And I think that's the whole point, isn't it?
Yeah, and you know what? Totally, and it was always God that brought me back as well. And I think like, yeah, it's just that it's exactly what you're saying. It's that relationship, and you can have knowledge but also wisdom in those moments as well, because I think saying the right thing at the right time is also important, and we can pray about that, and God knows as well, and it's relationship, man, and we're always working something out as well. Like, we're becoming more and more like Jesus, and from season to season there's new things coming to the surface that comes out, and sometimes that can be it can be a bit messy and ugly, but that stuff has to come out so God can come in. And I think sometimes people wanting to just control people's behavior can sometimes put a cap on that process, when God is actually working stuff like out. And also, usually, the stuff that we can get caught up in, obviously we need conversation, but a lot of it's just built on sand as well. It's built on sand, and you eventually will get to a point where you're like, there's no foundation, this isn't solid, this isn't satisfying, I need Jesus. And so I think we can discuss to love people really well. Let your life speak as well. Don't underestimate the power of being an example and letting your life speak, and loving people very well.
Yes.
But it's not perfect, is
No.
it? We're all just trying to work it out as
and
we
it doesn't
go.
have to be perfect, because it just comes back to
Yeah.
that, that adventure with the Lord, in the relationship with him on a day-to-day basis, in the mundane, in the times of temptation, or in the times of falling, or the times of success. It literally needs to, like the earth revolves around the sun, our lives just need to revolve around that relationship with the Lord, through all the seasons. And that in itself is just a whole journey, isn't it? Learning to continually come back to him. I have one more question for you, and that is, what do you think of the word surrender? And in your journey with God, like in this, through working through things and maybe drifting and coming back, and how has the word or the process of surrender looked like? I know it's a deep question, but yeah.
Yeah. Oh gosh, that's a good question. Surrender. When I think of the word surrender, I think of the word abide as well, like holding hands with the word abide. And there was years ago where I had this sort of picture of, like learning how you abide in the Lord, how you surrender, how you kind of allow him just everything, literally giving him everything. And I had this picture of floating on your back down this stream, and to float on your back, you literally don't have to do anything. You're literally just relaxing, and you're letting the river take you. And I think sometimes I can sometimes worry a lot, like I struggle with worrying. And when we're worrying, or when we're holding on to something, or when we want to control, or when we're fearful, I struggle with fear as well. And, when we want to kind of grab onto those things, it's remembering to just let go, and just lie lie on your back and let the river take you. And I think that's what surrender is like for me. Like, as you put Jesus first, as you just remain in Jesus and let the river take you, everything will flow from that place. It's sort of seek first the kingdom and his righteousness, and everything will be added. Like, it's really not your job to achieve the plans that he's got for you. Like, as you remain in him and surrender the control and you trust him and all of the other things, probably different for every person, you're with God, you're good. Like, you're in him, you're locked in, you know, and he will take you everywhere you need. And he's so good. Like, he really is so good and really faithful, and you're not going to miss the boat. You're not going to miss the boat. So
I love that. It reminded me of John 15, which I'll actually read to close. I think it's John 15. Yes, where Jesus says that he's the vine. And he actually says, remain in me. He said, I am the vine, you are the branches. If you remain in me and I in you, you will bear much fruit. Apart from me, you can do nothing. If you do not remain in me, you are like a branch that is thrown away and withers. If you remain in me and my words remain in you, ask whatever you wish and it will be done for you. Wow, that's a promise.
This
is to my Father's glory that you bear much fruit, showing yourselves to be my disciples. As the Father has loved me, so I have loved you. So remain in my love. I love that. I love that you connected surrender to remain, because it is like, and also when, you know, and it's that choice as well, that choice to like, oh, I'm going to remain in you, Lord, through the season, or, you know, through the struggle, whatever it is. And we don't have to do anything. It's just that choice to remain in that relationship with him, and fruit will come. Like you say, you know, we don't have to strive.
Absolutely. Yeah, totally. And I often say to people when chatting about this, like, when you feel yourself like tensing up, if you're worrying, if you're scared, or anxiety, or like anything like that, like literally go free. Like, just let go, like physically let go, and just think about that picture. And if you actually think about it, if a tree was trying to like bear fruit the way that we try to, you know, do whatever, even yesterday, like, I'm writing an article for the series at the moment, Wrath vs. Forgiveness, and I was like trying to sort of think of what's right, and I'm like, I don't need to try. And if like a tree was like trying to bear fruit, it's not going to do anything. It's going to bear fruit. Like,
it's going to come,
you know, at the right time. Yeah.
Ray, I love that. Thank you so much for sharing who you are and some of your story and experiences and your walk with the Lord. And I definitely would like you to come back in the future. But for the listeners, how can we find you on the social medias?
Oh, yes. So you can find me on Wiildhearts, which is WIILD Hearts, and then a double underscore. So you can find me on that. And you can find me on YouTube as well under Ray's World, RAE, Ray's World, where I chat about this kind of thing, really.
Awesome.
So yeah, that's where you can find me.